Hello again, I'm back in 2014, very first video, and just a little thing to take care of because I never did it before Christmas, and I know it's nearly the end of January, but I'm going to say it anyway. I hope you all had a good Christmas and a Happy New Year, and if you're not real Christian or you don't celebrate Christmas, happy holidays. Right, that's over. Let's get stuck in. The last two videos I did were essentially a trailer and movie review, quite basic if I'm honest, not that insightful. So in this video I'm going to be giving my own insight and my thoughts on something that has riled a lot of debate and produced a bunch of theories. For those of you who have followed my Twitter or my Instagram, you would know that a couple of months ago I purchased my copy of Animal Crossing New Leaf on Nintendo 3DS. And this was first made itself known to me by, before I go any further, I'd like to give a shout out to the Sticky Paddle and Mullet Mike for their video on the subject I'm going to talk about. And of course, if you play Animal Crossing New Leaf and you're quite known, you're quite active in the Animal Crossing community, you probably know where this video is going. Yes, I'm going to be taking a look at the infamous Aika Village. I finally got the time and got the dream code to actually visit it myself. So, I don't have a capture card or anything like that, so all I've managed to do is a bunch of screenshots during my visit there. So what I'm going to be doing is showing all of my screenshots and kind of looking in depth at some of the imagery and themes that are shown in this little village. Okay, so let's begin. Alright, before we really get into the analysis of Aika Village, here is the dream address if anyone would like to visit the town for themselves and try and come up with their own theories. With that said, let's begin the real analysis. Okay, so after you enter Aika Village, you'll end up here, a bed in the middle of what seems to be a grey fuzzy pattern path, which is often overlooked by some visitors to this town. It should be noted that this same pattern appears later on, but the meaning's not exactly clear, but it may be a significant part to the story that's being told here in Aika Village. When you look at it from a certain way, the pattern is reminiscent of TV static, and in fact the pattern is laid out in a rectangle, so perhaps it's intended to mimic a television screen. Around this area there's also statue fountains scattered among these patterns, and the sound of the pouring water is said to resemble that of static. Question is, are we entering this town through a TV set, or is Aika Village what's on TV? This is just my interpretation of the first part you come to in Aika Village. And just a little bit of trivia here, well, not exactly trivia, but I think it's important to note that when you enter Aika Village, it's set at 4 o'clock in the morning. You can probably tell this yourself from the music that's playing in the background. Whatever the intended meaning behind this first part of Aika Village, the use of the TV may well be acting as like a window or a portal into another world, some type of escape, or maybe it's just a hint in reference at The Ring. You know, that scene where she comes through the TV? I don't know, it may be a reference to that, or it's just symbolic of an escape into another world. The last thing to note here is there's a doll inside a present laying next to the bed. It may look like an innocent setup when you first enter, but no one really knows what would happen if you managed to bring that doll back to your own town. Okay, on to the next part. Before we go any further, I would just like to take this bit of time to look at the town's layout. Now, the layout of Aika Village seems to have been purposely made in order to create a linear progression throughout the town, which basically means everyone who visits Aika Village has to go in visit and go around in a specific order. As you can see here on this screenshot of Aika Village from the map screen, you start essentially in the middle. Now, as you can also see here, there are 4 blue houses. This is how the tale of Aika Village is presented to us. And this is the way it's basically told. Okay, so now that I've briefly explained that, let's go and visit that first blue house and see what we can make of it. Okay, so now we're at the first house, and as you can see from this screenshot, it's supposed to, well, from what I see, it's supposed to show the perfect family home, the perfect location, and this is in the southern portion of Aika Village. And looking around, there's perfect fruit and Jacob's ladders. These can only be obtained by having a perfect town rating. Just a little bit there for any Animal Crossing players. This could very well be the state of the family home and the family prior to Aika receiving the doll that was shown at the very beginning of this video. Perhaps showing the family as they were long ago. Okay, let's move on to the 2 sets of flowers that we've got here. The pink ones on the right are supposed to symbolize Aika's mother, and pink carnations are received on Mother's Day. The others on the left are red carnations, which is supposed to symbolize the father, Aika's father, and there are 2 white carnations, which are the hybrid offspring of a red-pink carnation cross. It's interesting to note here that there are a few white carnations. This may well be because Aika is much younger and physically smaller than her parents, but I think that may imply that she's the only thing that's keeping the family together. The pink and the white carnations are not touching each other. They only touch a single carnation. This could imply that there is tension between the 2 parents, which is perhaps hidden, and maybe it's supposed to symbolize that Aika is equally attached to both her parents. So just a little thing there. One thing I forgot to mention earlier on is right around this house you might bump into a girl in red, which is basically Aika. Now, if you talk to her during your time around the first house, the text that appears is written in Japanese. And if you, like I said, if you talk to her, she'll talk to you in Japanese. And basically what she's saying, and this is, I think it's been translated to "I love my mommy." Now, if we take a look at the dialogue box and note the way that her name is spelled when you do talk to her, it's spelled with using the same characters every time, but in some places a smaller version of certain characters are used. This may just be a way to identify each of the Aika characters throughout Aika Village, or it may be trying to mimic a child's handwriting, which is not uniform in size. Alternatively, it could imply that each of the Aikas is a little different, like at a different stage in life. This use of these little katakana symbols is supposed to
in a way show the passing of time to some degree, I think. I'll have to research that a little bit more. You should also be aware that the name Aika is a very popular name in Japan. Now, if we split the name up, I means love in Japanese and ka means song. I think this is also helpful to note because you do come across quite a few musical instruments around Aika Village. So just a little something there to think about. Okay, now that we've got this bit sorted, let's finally go inside that house.
After going inside the house, what we see is a lot of happy scenery, and it seems to be a birthday party taking place. Now, let's divert our attention first to the present that's on the table. Now, presumably we can guess that this is the doll, like the one we picked up earlier by the bed. And if we look at the mannequins around the table, the one in the middle is obviously Aika, and the other two are her parents. Now, the TV is right there, just out of shot, I think. But it's there, but it's not on. There is a fancy doll on the ranch dresser, just behind the three mannequins. Now, if we think back to the outside of the home, with the red, white and pink carnations, the mother should be the one on Aika's left side, and well, it's technically the right from this angle. It's funny how behind Aika's mother is the perfect doll behind the glass. One of the theories surrounding Aika Village and the entire story is the fact that Aika's mother was overbearing and she wanted the perfect child. This is part of the reason why there appears to be tension between mother and daughter, which is thought to kind of help along the events that come. Okay, looking around a little more. It's interesting that the user who created this town, now the blocked off room where the doll is, that's assumed to be the parents' room. It's interesting to think about this, and you can only imply that they are hiding something about their relationship that way. Before we venture any further, I would just like to go back to something I said earlier. Now, in this room there is a grandfather clock and, of course, the TV. As I said earlier in the video, it's clearly 4 in the morning. It's important to note this because the number 4 in Japanese horror towns is not really overstated, because the words 4 and death in Japanese are homophones, which means they sound the same. And for this reason, number 4 is a symbol for death, or some kind of reference to death. Okay, so that's basically a quick look at the downstairs. So let's head upstairs and see Aika's room. As we go upstairs and we go into Aika's room, what we see is another happy scenery. First off, I think this room really does emphasize just how small a child Aika is, which is something I think a lot of people don't really pick up on. Okay, for starters, there is a pacifier or a dummy in the back, as well as a few toys. This may imply that Aika isn't even in elementary school, which means she's possibly younger than 5 years old. Now, let's take a look at the position of the dolls in the room, because these do change later. One very important and often confusing element we see here is the doghouse. There is no doghouse at any of the other homes in Aika Village, only in the graveyard, where apparently 10 are buried. Some people have looked at this and come to the conclusion that Aika has had 10 dogs but has killed every single one. Some take this in the context of the Animal Crossing New Leaf universe, whereas you have 10 villages in the town, which to infer she killed all the animal residents in the town,
If the dogs were not killed but died of natural causes, perhaps another one was taken in every time one died, which is one way to imply the passing of time, although an average life expectancy of 13 years each would come to about 330 years worth. Anyway, moving on. Please note the picture of the happy family and also the picture of the mother. This is the only character that has been drawn twice, and the first in the line of pictures from left to right. Basically what this shows is the importance of Aika's mother in her life. Again, when you look at it rationally, it's not abnormal. Any child has that bond with its mother. Its mother is one of the most important aspects of his or her life, from birth to, we know, death. One last important symbol I'd like to talk about here is the dollhouse. Many people have noted this similarity in the layout within the miniature house to the actual Aika's house. I think there is no coincidence here, especially since the house has been rotated and placed specifically to provide the player with a view of the inside. I like to think that this is a way to get the player to think of themselves as a doll inside the dollhouse. Basically, what this could imply is how Aika felt growing up, and maybe Aika is playing with us now as we walk through this house, and that's reflected in the dollhouse. A couple of things to think about there. So with the first house done, let's head out and see what else Aika Village has. Okay, so here we are looking back at the map screen, and we've just had a look at the first house in Aika Village. So now we're going to be going to the right where that bridge is, and we're going to descend into the southern part of the town. Now, just before you come across to the bridge on the south side of town, you'll come across a glittering red carnation. This doesn't show up as I didn't take a screenshot of this, I apologise, but it's the one to the left of the most right perfect peach tree. This may just be a random flower placed by a villager, although there's no villager homes nearby, and given the detail to the town, it's impossible to be 100% certain. What this means exactly is, like I said, unclear, but the red carnations, as we've already established, is to symbolise Aika's father. This may be telling us just to keep him in mind during the events that have yet to come, or maybe it's just a little reminder that through crossing the bridge we're leaving the perfect glistening world that was Aika's life before, and we're now entering a deeper, darker part of her past. So now we've crossed over the bridge and descended into the southern part of Aika Village. The area just south of the bridge is filled with pitfalls and littered with snacks, toys. They could be things that Aika enjoyed as a child. Many people believe this area represents a struggle that Aika has faced in her life. Although the presence of sweets and other things associated with children makes me wonder if Aika really grew up. This could imply of the things that Aika was deprived of as a child, seeing as they are surrounded by pitfalls which keep you from reaching them. Perhaps because her mother never allowed her to have them. Other people have said that the maze represents Aika's mental state. She's lost and confused by the events going on around her. If we imagine the physical journey through the town from the first home to the last as a journey through time, like it was implied earlier on, this is the period after the perfect family, just before the second house where the father has left. So this area of the town may represent the problems surfacing in her parents' relationship. One user, or someone who has visited Aika Village, took the time to count all the different objects laid about
and noted about 4 balloons of different colours, which she took to symbolise death, number 4. Okay, let me explain. There are 4 balloons throughout this area. 4, as we've already established, being the number for death. And if we look at the colours of the balloons, the red represents love, the blue represents patience, yellow represents happiness, and purple represents wealth. This is one of the theories that has been passed around here. And just before I explain a little further, the screenshot I've got on screen right now is something I dug up. Now, out of all the objects that you find at this part in the village, for anyone who's ever played Animal Crossing New Leaf and buys the fortune cookies to get the other items, these are Nintendo exclusive items. For example, you could have, I don't know, Samus's suit or some other objects. The particular one I unearthed here is Majora's Mask. It's the ticket you give to one of the Nuke brothers in order to get Majora's Mask. Now, the placement of this particular item here really just deepens what's been going on here in Aika Village, because as the description says on screen right now, if you leave my mask out there, something terrible will happen. So this pretty much cements the story of Aika Village in a way, and it's a nice little reference to Zelda, personally I think. Okay, moving right along. If you pass by Town Hall, which is right down here, you'll catch a glimpse of the picture of Aika's mother. This could just be another sign how much Aika loves her, but it may be another piece of evidence in favour of the theory that her mother is overbearing and controlling. As we move on, there is a megaphone near retail. If you call Wendell, he won't show up. No clue as to its purpose or its symbolism, but I just thought I'd mention it regardless. Now, if you move a little further on into the next stop here in Aika Village, there is a southern beach ramp. Now, if you head down this way, there is a graveyard, and if you dig up the graves, there are 10 dog houses. Nearby, there are some gloves. Some people have assumed this to be leaving DNA or evidence of the crime. The only problem I have with the theory that Aika killed the dogs is she wouldn't hide them, not bury them with their own gravestones. This may lead one to believe that she killed them in some type of alternate mental state, perhaps under control of the doll. This is nothing new to horror, as it's well established that children are very susceptible to the paranormal or the supernatural, whereas adults have some degree of resistance to it. So this could very well be the case. Alternatively, Aika's mother could have buried the dogs, never believing that her daughter killed them, or there was, along the lines, as it's already been established, Aika's mother overbearing and everything. And in a lot of cases, the child acts out against the parent and does things that would potentially shake the image that they try and present to others. So, working with the theory that Aika's mother could have buried the dogs after, well, if we assume that Aika killed them either by herself or under the control of the doll, this would fit it really well. Of course, if the doll was possessed, she could have the power to kill the dogs outright. Of course, one of the most popular theories is the doll is jealous of Aika's love for her mother, so she was killed, so her and Aika could be together forever. Seeing Aika's love for the dogs, the doll could have killed it out of pure jealousy. And dogs can be replaced, but a mother can't. So that's something to think about. The fact there are 10 dog houses have been linked in a way to the 10 bees' nests that can be found in the lost and found of the police station. You have to remember that the creator purposely included the police station here, and also note they've been purposely worked out to have all the bees' nests. What's more, there is a dog in charge of the police station. The bee or the beehive as a symbol here is unclear, although traditionally in ancient Egypt, bees have been associated with immortality, and honey being a drink of the gods. If you look at it through a Christianity point of view, the queen bee is thought to be of the Virgin Mary, and the hive is the church. Personally, I don't see the connection between this traditional symbolism to the happenings that's going on here in Aika Village. Excuse me. The only thing that you can really take from this is the queen bee imagery, which could be associated with Aika's mother. This could be especially true considering the only other place a beehive appears is in the third home near a picture of Aika and her mother. This could imply that her mother was the cause of the death of the 10 animals. Others believe that the hive represents anger or an argument. Some believe it to be literal rather than symbolism and purposeful, that the bees were used as a killing device. One last thing to note about this particular section, even though it doesn't seem to be part of the main story, just as a little bit of a side thing. As I was saying, the word for bee and the word for 8 are homophones in Japanese. The fact that 8 to whatever, this is all connected with death. Very basic. So, that aside, let's go to the second house. As we go into the second house, we see a very different scene compared to the first house. The main floor seems to be a maze. Very dark compared to the bright, vibrant, and quite colourful of the first house, like I've already mentioned. The room is heavily featured with exit sign items, as well as an exit sign pattern displayed along the small LCD display. The sign on the exit sign is that of a running man. Now, if we go back to what I was saying earlier about the little reference to Aika's father, this is probably explaining a bit more about him, because some people believe that this room is to symbolize Aika's father running away from home and leaving Aika and her mother by themselves. This dark maze may represent Aika's feelings of confusion, not knowing where to go or where to turn during this time in her life. The fact it's very dark could also imply or assume that the father left during late at night, or it may simply be this way for the purpose of the maze. And like I said, with this being a maze, there are black cushions placed throughout this room to block your path. This is to further show the confusion, I think. Right, so that's the downstairs explained very briefly. Now, if we head on upstairs, we may get an idea or a clue as to why Aika's father left. Interestingly, as we head upstairs, we come across a room that's got flowery wallpaper and flowery floors, but most importantly are the 3 or 4 objects in the room. We have 2 statues, a perfect apple, and a snake. Now, this is the image from
the Garden of Eden, where the snake tricks Eve into picking the forbidden fruit. So we've got some religious references here, which I found to be very surprising, considering what Aika Village has shown us so far. But let's look at this a little further. Many people have pointed out that the female statue, the Venus de Milo, is a fake. What this could mean symbolistic-wise is that the mother, Aika's mother, is pretending to stay true to her husband, but is actually seeing someone else. Others have argued the case that the fake statue was used because it has long hair, which looks more like Eve. Whether there was any infidelity or not, this scene is important because it represents a departure from paradise. Again, going back to the scene in the first house and the north side of town, as Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden. So this was quite a surprise, like I said. And if we head downstairs, let's see what we can find there that will add to this story. Alright, and as we head into the basement, the religious imagery continues. We are presented with 12 dolls eating at a large table. Some people believe that this is meant to refer or reference the Last Supper, in which Jesus predicted that someone would betray him, and this would lead to his crucifixion. Now, behind the red doll that's across from the player as they enter the room, in this screenshot, is an axe. Perhaps the connection to the Last Supper is not portrayal exactly, but the fact that someone or something is hiding evil intentions. Conversely, if it's Aika that does kill her mother, that would certainly constitute a betrayal. However, who dies and when in this story is not clear, as we will see later on. Some have suggested that this is a scene from one of Aika's dollhouses, and the axe itself symbolizes the evil intentions of Aika's doll, or the evil intentions of Aika herself. Perhaps it is the doll starting to work its way into her mind and influence her, because as I've stated before, and it's pretty much a rule of the horror genre or the supernatural genre, that children are easily more susceptible to outside forces, because they're more of pure mind and soul, and you know, they can easily be purified or corrupted. It depends on what influences them. And there is also a back room in this house that we are going to have a look at now. After returning to the main floor, you can make your way across to the other side where there's an entrance to a back room. Now, the back room of this house is one of the creepiest, but yet one of the most intriguing parts of the town. And as you go inside, you'll see that it contains 24 figurines, all facing away from the player as they enter the room. Now, what do all of these figurines have in common? And the answer is eyes. And there's 2 more sets of eyes that will be staring at you on the back wall. That makes a total of 52 eyes. Now, could this be a reference to the number of hours in a day, or weeks in a year? 24 and 52 respectively. People genuinely believe that this room represents Aika's friends and family turning their backs on her, or Aika turning her back on her problems. Personally, I think it may be Aika trying to ignore the problems that her parents are facing, or maybe she feels this breakup is somehow her fault, and she's trying to move past it, but it's always there, staring back at her, like a really bad memory, or something that you may have done as a child, a mistake that you'll always regret no matter what you do. Anyway, so that's this house done, and as you head outside,
make sure to dig up the wetsuit that's buried between the two clumps of bushes, because you will need this to take a look at another part of Aika Village, roughly where the last house is. For those of you who have been watching this video and you have no idea where to find a shovel, when you first enter Aika Village you will see Lloyd, this little brown thing by the bed. I don't know exactly what he is. I probably do know, but I've forgotten. Anyway, you can borrow the tools from him, and that's where you get your shovel to dig up the wetsuit. Anyway, I would just like to thank everyone who watched this video. I'm having to do this in two parts, simply because there is a lot to talk about, and I didn't want it to get too long, which I failed to a degree. Anyway, I just want to thank you all again for watching. Yeah, until next time.